you and many people who might be listening to this will go, oh no, here she goes. She's going to say that again, but I'm gonna, because it's an analogy that is true 15 years ago as it is today. If you see one ant, you go, that's one ant. Okay, not a big deal. I'm not going to worry about it too much. Next day, now there's 2 ants. Okay, maybe I'm not going to worry about it. The next day, 10 ants. Wait a minute, if there's 10 ants, that means there's 10 million or more ants ready to come through the door. So let's prepare, let's be ready for something, even if it never happens. How great is it, especially when you're a company that's $250 billion in assets, and a report got sent out, it was amazing, right? Oh, everybody's great, this is wonderful. But we don't know that in 4 weeks or 4 months that somebody may say or do something that no longer aligns with our values. It's being able to take this unfettered information, it's like a big survey. I get to ask the world a survey without them knowing. So as a result, it's somewhat of an unbiased survey because they're not trying to appease me, the brand. They're not trying to appease me, Kathleen Fetters. What they're just doing is by their own behavior, sharing their feelings and thoughts about something, some product, some experience that they've had.
Back everyone to the Honeypot podcast, where we're highlighting the dynamic applications of social intelligence beyond marketing. Today's guest is Kathleen Fetters. She brings over 15 years of experience in social intelligence, research, and analytics. And as a leader in the field, Kathleen has a unique blend of analytical, creative, and technical skills that she uses to turn data into actionable business strategies. Whether it's building social intelligence programs from the ground up or navigating the complexities of consumer sentiment, Kathleen's work is a blueprint for how businesses should harness data for growth and innovation. So let's welcome Kathleen to the podcast, and let's talk about some social intelligence. Kathleen, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, Khalil. It's so great to be here. Thank you for spending some time with me today.
Kathleen, before we get started, I want to show my gratitude to you. A lot of people may not know our origin stories, but you were one of the brave few early adopters that gave us time of day when we first got our business started, when we first started the Niche Fire platform. And I want to say that I'm so grateful to kind of meet people like you first off, because sometimes when you're starting a business, you have people that can detract you from your dreams or your goals. And that first meeting we had with you, when you helped us understand that we actually had a good idea and we should work towards it, meant the world to me. And throughout the years, you've been mentoring me, Michael, and Steven, and helping us understand different things. And I just want to first of all, say thank you for that. Thank you for joining me for my show. And how are you?
I'm doing great. And how can I not be doing great after what you just shared and what you just said? You just filled my heart. I mean, I will say that when I did first meet you, it was amazing to see this innovation and these new tools and a new approach to something that, was kind of, I don't want to say stagnant, but it hadn't really changed a lot in the first few years of social intelligence. And then you guys come along and say hey, there's more that we can do. There's things that we can even be better at, and let me show you. And so that was really exciting for me. And it's just been awesome just to see the trajectory that you guys at Niche Fire have been on ever since I met you.
Well, I'm just glad that we were scrappy and we kept going and until we were able to kind of meet you. And we met some other people at the time. I think Brian Wright was another one that we were able to meet and, kind of help bring us into the community the right way to teach us how to talk about what we're doing. And really it boils down to understanding social intelligence. And social intelligence is a very interesting area, I think, in business. Is becoming more mainstream. But let's start off right there, Kathleen. Let's what is social intelligence? Let's kind of go from there.
Well, I think, it's really interesting because social media in general is like this umbrella, right? And so everybody I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people, when they hear social media, words, whatever comes after that, they really just think of what we all do all day, right? LinkedIn, TikTok, etc. It's just the act of communicating and publishing, engaging, and all that stuff. The kind of the general conversation, which is great and super important. It's great from a community standpoint. It's great from a business standpoint. But social intelligence is this other piece of it that doesn't necessarily get the visibility that I think it deserves, because without it, you really don't have the focus and the parameters to be successful when you're talking about the publishing and engagement side. So for me, social intelligence is being able to take this unfettered information, like it's like a big survey. I get to ask the world a survey without them knowing. So as a result, it's somewhat of an unbiased survey, because they're not trying to appease me, the brand. They're not trying to appease me, Kathleen Fetters. What they're just doing is, by their own behavior, sharing their feelings and thoughts about something, some product, some experience that they've had. I get to go in with social intelligence, and I get to pull out all of the important pieces and take that and inform not just social media, not just content, but I can do that to inform really truly any aspect of business. And I think that's the difference of kind of social media listening. It's important. So, oh, that campaign went well or what have you. That's really good, and you need to have that. But this other piece is like taking everything else and supporting it, right? So you have the nucleus and you have everything around it. And then what you have is something that's really full and really holistic. So I love social intelligence in the sense that I have an impact now with this information and data to influence where to open a storefront, what kind of content we should be writing, what kind of benefits should we be offering our current employees, and what do we need to do in regards to talent acquisition. I mean, it really runs the gamut. And I think that's why I get so excited about it, because to me, the possibilities are truly endless. And then now we're taking over these last several years with groups like Niche Fire coming on and saying, like, look, there's even more, right? There's not just like what they're saying, but now with Niche Fire, it's also what they're doing and how they're doing it and the behavior that goes with it. So now that nucleus and all this stuff around it, that cell has just gotten bigger, and now I can see more and do more and be so much more prescriptive. So I'm going to be very animated, just so you know, because
Yeah,
I'm very
no, I
passionate
love that.
about this work and what we've been able to do thus far, and what I foresee us being able to do going forward.
I think there's a lot to unpack and kind of what you just talked about, Kathleen. And I don't want to derail from the original questions I sent you too much, but I'm going to call it a little bit of an audible just to kind of pinpoint that, right? And understanding that it's not a replacement to traditional market research. It's not a replacement to those areas of the business that and depend on for that type of information that you already have set in place, right? This is an area, like you were saying, it's we live in an age where consumers now, they feel that they expect brands to show up the way that they want them to, because they feel the answers are already there. They feel like they're talking about it on their pages. They feel like they're engaging with it on the different platforms or channels that they're engaging on. So social intelligence gives you the ability, like you said, to take the ideas, the strategies, the insights from the customers themselves, from the people, from culture, right? And
Yeah.
implement it into design, innovation, products. Not to mention ads, marketing. Obviously, we want to be able to do that type of stuff too, but
Yeah.
it's so much broader what you could do with it. And I think that that's why there's an uptick in these departments being created, and really people wanting these type of organizations to be built. So with my first question for you, I know that you've built a lot of these programs from the ground up.
Mhm.
Could you share like a specific example of a program that you developed and the impact that it had on its organization?
Sure. So, kind of speaking to like the first answer I gave you is, social intelligence can be really unlimited, right? And so, one of the things that I noticed when I was relatively new to First Republic Bank and beginning to build this program is that we had First Republic Bank had a annual report paper, a good old paper annual report that they would mail out. I mean, a lot of them, right? And I said, wow, like how do we select who goes into the annual report? Because there'd be about 40 or 50 clients every year. And, there was a very kind of manual process, and it, made sense to me, and it wasn't broke, so it didn't need fixing, but it did need optimization. And I said, well, what happens if somebody you featured in the annual report may say something or take an action that is not commiserate with the values of our brand? And nobody had an answer, right? Because nobody had thought about it, because nobody was doing anything about it. So it really started what I called the brand due diligence review program at First World Bank. Very small. I said, once you have your list of who is potentially able to be in the annual report, let's go ahead and let's use social intelligence tools to understand more about who they are and how they interact and engage, or not interact or engage publicly, because this is a brand reputation situation. You are mailing this out to 500,000 people every year. And so let's just make sure that everybody is aligned with the values, not just from when they walk in the door to drop a deposit off or make a withdrawal, but are they aligned in our values in all of their aspects of their public life? So great. So that was a very small start. But then, as you know, Khalil, like when you're looking at data, that data is as good as the moment you're looking at it. And the second you're not looking at it, it becomes stale. It's kind of like you buy a new car and the price goes down the minute you drive it off the lot. It's the same thing with data. So the tools that I use, social listening tools, and then some other workflow management tools, is I built a program where now, once this annual report was out in public, now we can monitor and listen for how people were reacting to the annual report and reacting to the folks that we featured in the annual report. And then also, how are they behaving and acting, right? Because like on day one, when that annual report got sent out, it was amazing, right? Oh, everybody's great. This is wonderful. But we don't know that in 4 weeks or 4 months that somebody may say or do something that no longer aligns with our values. And then how are we going to address it? What are we going to do? We need to have time to be able to course correct and protect the brand reputation and that of the client that is in the annual report. So that is an interesting way in which we started to kind of take social intelligence in another kind of format, so to speak. So that first year, the brand due diligence review program, we probably reviewed, I don't know, let's say 140 or so, what we called candidates. And then once we saw how that could help refine the annual report program and also protect the brand and maybe identify people that we wanted to be in the annual report but perhaps didn't volunteer to be in it, then we said, if we're that concerned about our brand reputation and how we have value alignment with who's in the annual report, what about our testimonial clients? What about our referral partners that we're now putting our reputation out there with? So we went from 140 or so reviews to, in 2022, I think we were doing upwards of over 1,000. And what had happened is not a single public entity could be associated with the bank unless they went through this program first. And then we did ongoing monitoring to make sure that we had the levers and we had a process in place that was as automated as possible to then be able to make changes if ever necessary. So for example, somebody had decided to become a political candidate. Well, First Republic Bank did not that was not part of their program. We did not associate with anything that was politically done. So as soon as we knew that that person had put their hat in the ring to become mayor of a community in California, we then took down all of their digital ads and made sure that that alignment stayed true to our policies. And it gave us an opportunity to be really quick about it before word got out across the whole entire community. So that was I would say that was a success. It started off as a pilot that turned into something that literally vendor management wouldn't do anything without working with us, or family offices would not do any referrals without working with my team. So social intelligence really has that ability to be that broad and be that successful in an organization, even when it starts off small.
That's interesting that you say that, because one of my hypothesis when we first got into the space was that comms and reputation would be the biggest areas that would see the value in this stuff first because um, it moves so quickly in the social
Yeah.
space, right? Like we are very much so a uh, social, you know, social media led like type of community like now because everyone goes to social for something, whether it's entertainment, whether it's to express. So I do love that were some of the components or steps that you have to have in place when you're developing a social intelligence organization from the ground up. But what are some of the other areas? Because you kind of touched on, you know, tracking and making sure that you're understanding what's happening, identifying who and what that you're doing. So, what are some of those other areas or key components in establishing the social intelligence program from the ground up?
Well, I think it's kind of
And
interesting.
let me cut you off. I'm sorry. Let's take it a step further. What are those extra things? And then how do you identify those risks and opportunities as well, like you kind of spoke about with the example from the Republic Bank? So,
Uh,
what are the other components? And then how do you identify the risk?
well, what's interesting, I think, is that with social intelligence, and if you want to call it, social listening, whatever aspect that you're discussing, building a program, and it's not even just building the program, it's also overseeing the program in general, is it's not just about what's in the tool and what you're doing in the tool. It is making sure that you have, you're well networked within your organization. And at the meetings that you're at, you're really listening, right? Listening isn't just using social intelligence platforms to listen to what other people are saying publicly. It's also listening to, your internal stakeholders, your colleagues, being at those meetings. I think there was a time where ironically, we were talking about AI earlier before we started recording. And I remember we were having a conversation about AI at a business meeting at First Republic Bank. And nobody was like asking any questions. It was just really like, we were just having a discussion about it. And so I was like, this could be really interesting. Let's hop into our tool of record and let's play around with, what are people saying about AI in regards to banking, biases that can be attached to AI if there's too much automation, which can lead to some issues, regulatory issues with banking. And so started to see, these conversations, fear about AI, from a client perspective, as well as just within the industry. So because I was at the meeting and nobody asked me anything, but I was listening to what they were saying in the meeting. Then I went to the tool and listened to what the people were saying about that in the tool. I then came back to those folks and said, hey, we were in a meeting a couple of weeks ago and this is the conversation that we had. I just wanted to share with you some of the things that I heard from the meeting that I then took to this tool. And then here is some of the results of that. And everybody like, what, wait, I didn't even ask for that. You just were able to present that. And so we were able to then use those talking points to have much richer discussions about where we were going to go as an organization, implementing AI, the methodology, etc. So it wasn't necessarily a planned thing, but those are the kinds of things that I think social intelligence and the people who manage those tools really have the ability and the responsibility, right,
Mm-hmm.
of being able to pay attention and know what's going on in the organization and know what the priorities and objectives are. And then on your own, you don't have to be asked. Like, I know nobody has a lot of time, but then pop in and use that tool and give some examples. That gives not only you and your program visibility, but then once you have executives like perking up a little bit, like, wait a minute, we have this internal resource that we can use. All of a sudden you have, you're begging for work, so to speak, in the beginning when you're building a program and nobody really knows why you're there, what you're doing to, then you have to like, how do I say no? Because I have too many people asking me for too many things at once. So it's a great problem to have, but I think it's taking those moments and really like jumping on them. Don't wait for a request. Just
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to what's going on around you and take the opportunity to kind of show off really what the capabilities of you, your team, and your tools can do.
Hmm. And what about the riskier side? Like, how do you identify the opportunities, but also the risk in doing a social intelligence project?
Sure. I mean, I will say this, like when I first joined First Republic Bank, and social media in general was very new to the organization. And so we were not as a team very popular. There was a lot of, what are these people doing here? And then in particular for social intelligence, the information security team was very concerned, especially because you're regulated. Well, where's this data coming from? How are we storing it, et cetera? And I do think spending time having conversations and just showing them, doing demonstrations of what it is and what it isn't was really helpful to gain their trust and to become partners and collaborators versus like kind of adverse. So that was one thing that I think really helped kind of give some good visibility. And then also to be able to partner and say, well, let's try that with you guys, right? And so like we started a new function called cyber services, which was a way, we being First Republic Bank, which is a way in which we were offering to help clients, personal or professional clients, from a safety perspective with their money. I mean, come on, it's a lot of money we're talking about here. So it wasn't just about the reputational risk for First Republic Bank, and that's what we use social intelligence for, and I think a lot of brands do, but we were also using the tools to understand what kinds of risks are out there in the financial industry and what are regular everyday people talking about in regards, especially for payments like Zelle and Venmo that was starting to encroach on the business. So what we were able to do is actually identify what real people were feeling for themselves and their finances as a risk. And as a result, we built out this new group that would then go to the homes, go to the businesses, and walk them through and quell their fears and actually do analysis on their systems and show them and give them the tools to protect themselves from risk. So not only were we protecting the brand from a risk perspective, but we were building programs and even functional groups to help arm and empower our clients to protect themselves or be protected by us. And then I think you can also look at the reputation risk part of it. Is that I think a lot of people wait until there's like this volume spike, right? Like, oh, something bad's happening, right? Something good or something bad. And so it's always that spike. Well, Khalil, you and many people who might be listening to this will go, oh no, here she goes. She's going to say that again, but I'm gonna, because it's an analogy that is true 15 years ago as it is today. Mm-hmm. I look for the ant that might be crawling across your sink, right? Because if you see one ant, you go, that's one ant. Okay, not a big deal. I'm not going to worry about it too much. Next day, now there's two ants. Okay, maybe I'm not going to worry about it. The next day, 10 ants. Wait a minute. If there's 10 ants, that means there's 10 million or more ants ready to come through the door. So to me, social intelligence from that aspect of risk, I don't wait for those volume spikes. I pay attention to the ant here, the ant there, and then I may not be a personal predictor of the future, but it does give me the opportunity to pay attention more to determine whether or not, hey, let's prepare, let's be ready for something, even if it never happens. How great is it, especially when you're a company that's $250 billion in assets, and people's wealth and personal finances are wrapped up into what you do. It's really a great opportunity to take social intelligence and say, hey, we can nip this in the bud. We can course correct. We can save time. We can save money. We can protect the brand. We can protect our clients. We can protect their future with just paying attention to those little things. So like, I know that was probably more answered than the question, but to me, that's that limitless opportunity that we have with social intelligence and why I find it to be so important to business as a whole, not just as a marketing function.
You know, I really love the direction that this happens. This is like the second or third episode where my questions kind of funnel right in. And I think you alluded to some of the things that can be answered in this next section. And I think you're going to like this next section. It's really going to help showcase your stuff. But you mentioned, building up that track record as that social listening person or that person that is trying to implement a social intelligence practice at your company and getting a seat at that table, right? We heard time and time again of people that do this type of work that we do, and they're fighting tooth and nail just to be heard about the things that they're bringing to the table. And you've came and told us a couple of real world examples of how you were able to translate what you're seeing within the social channels into actionable insights for your company. So, could you walk us through the process of taking raw social data, right? Seeing that one ant, what it costs. What are some of those ways where you now be able to gain an insight, right? Not just looking at the volumes, not just looking at virality, but being able to kind of actually see something, turn it into a insight, and then ensure that it's drive to a business goal. What's your process of doing that? I think that'll help out a lot of people in the organizations that are trying to push social intelligence to the top and get a seat at the table. So let's talk about the finesse, if you
Yeah.
will.
Absolutely. And it's ever evolving too, Khalil. Like, what I was doing 15 years ago, it's not even just the tools themselves that may have changed and evolved over time. It's really just, there was no rule book out there 15-ish years ago on how to do all this stuff, right? Because it was all so new. So a lot of my experience and methodology is trial and error and lots of error and trial error, right? So it's ever evolving. But what I think I have learned over time is, and this is where I think there's some misconceptions from people who may not be as familiar with social intelligence in general, is that the tool, yes, can give you all these highlights, right? Volume spikes, virality, sentiment. It tells you all this really important surface level tier 1 information, and at its core it gives you a lot of what you need for business. It gives you good direction on campaign success, or what you should be, content you should be writing, for next month's editorial calendar and all that. So I think that all of that is really great. I think what is missed is that you need to be in your tool and actually know your data, because Talkwalker and Hootsuite and all these different wonderful tools out there, they're not there to put it on a silver platter and deliver it to you, right? What they're doing is they're giving you everything that you need to then go pan for that gold, right? So here's the pan, the gold is in here, it's up to you to find it. So you got your surface level stuff that helps, some of those basic success metrics, if you were, and even signals for things that are changing, positive or negative, for your brand or your competitors if you're doing competitive analysis. But when I was working, I was consulting for a company called Boston Scientific recently, and they're a med tech company. And one of the things that I had noticed is I had done some work on identifying young onset patients with Parkinson's, so YOPD influencers in social. So it was a little difficult to identify them for a lot of different reasons I won't bore this audience with. But once that I found them and I built out this query in a dashboard, and you got all the numbers. Okay, about 33% of the time they talk about YOPD. Okay, that's great. But what is it that they're really talking about? What really is at the crux of it? And what I came to find out is spending days like looking in the tool, watching the engagement between this ecosystem that I've now built out in the platform. And I'm like, wow, a lot of these people are talking to each other. It's not just that they're influential in YOPD, but they're influential amongst each other as well, and a support system. So that was an insight that a platform cannot say, hey, Kathleen, guess what? This is a really supportive community. It's not going to tell you that. It isn't going to also tell me that what I started to see was that there were a lot of women who were suffering from YOPD and had major concerns about pregnancy, being able to take care of their children who were young, and or another phase is menopause, right? So where are the studies? What are the things that are for YOPD patients who are women who are going through these different parts of their physical lives? And it was a huge gap. And so again, the platform didn't tell me that. That was me spending time. I felt like these were my friends. Like I didn't even know that, but like I said, and as a result, I was able to then refine my query. I was able to build out these filters, and then I was able to then build out kind of an overview beyond what the team asked for, which is this isn't just the stats. This is the real deal. Let me tell you about what it's like for these women who are suffering with YOPD while they're trying to conceive or they're going through a change. And here is what they're trying to do on their own because nobody else is out here. This is an opportunity for content. This is an opportunity for outreach. This is an opportunity to showcase testimonials of women who are already going through YOPD and using Boston Scientific products and therapies. So to me, that is like a really great example of it's the tool does, let's say, 50% of the work. The rest of the work is really on those methodologies. And to me, it's really black and white. You go in and you just touch that data. You dig, you listen, you pay attention. You just don't look at it one day and then never look at it again. You come back, you get to know the data. Because now I can say like, oh, when I'm looking at a community of cardiologists and physicians who are influencers, I said, oh, Dr. Khalil has been talking a lot more lately. I've noticed that. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Khalil is talking about this particular topic, and that is a competitor brand. Interesting, right? The platform is not going to tell me that. I can extract that from the platform because I was paying attention, because I just got down and dirty with the data. Let's just put it. And so it's not some secret sauce. It is that I think that people aren't necessarily being trained to use social intelligence tools outside of the surface level. And B, even if they have that ability, they don't have the time, right? Because everything is so fast and you're getting asked all these questions and everybody wants to know sentiment and blah, 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 volume and whatever. And so I'm not saying that it isn't hard to do, but it is. And if you can take the time, and you become, weirdly, I'm not saying I'm a YOPD expert, but I know a whole lot more about what it's like in the community. And then what I also started to notice is that this is a community that loves TikTok because they show videos of their experiences when they're going through tremors. Ooh, who knew, right? Like, even though I found these influencers through Twitter, the reality is that a lot of what they share on Twitter also is on TikTok, and that's where the community's at. Those are the things the tool didn't tell me, but those are the things that I can tell the business.
Yeah, that's amazing. You ended up answering another question in that, so thank you for that. Because that is definitely a real world example of how you were able to kind of provide some impact. And I think, like I said, there's a lot of people that could champion the idea of social intelligence and they just don't know how to get to it. And one of the things I heard you say, or want to kind of reiterate, is it's like going to the gym every day. It's like building up any type of habit, right?
Yeah.
And this is a great habit to build up. And I think some other things that you can think about as well is data storytelling and how to tell the story of the data the proper way. This is something that I had to start picking up myself as a business owner in this space that wasn't traditionally trained to be like a data analyst or data storyteller. But there's a great book that I picked up. It's called Effective Data Storytelling by Brent Dykes. And it really breaks down some of the elements of kind of delivering that message. So maybe it could be how you tell the story of the data. Maybe it could be, like you said, having that practice or being able to kind of come up with those habits of going into the tool, looking for this, looking for that. Maybe there's some other ways that you can leverage some of the generative AI tools now to help you do desk research and things like that. But making yourselves useful and not dying, not letting your idea die or just stay siloed within your department, I think is the best advice that I pull for what you're saying. And really, like you said, know your numbers and know your stuff, because again, once you can provide that insight, it becomes valuable. Then leadership, your bosses, those people start to depend on that information coming from you. And now you can get budget, you can get bandwidth, you can get what you need to kind of pull these things off. Because as you mentioned, Kathleen, these things can take a long time, right? Even when you have great tools, you can spend some time doing it. So I love that. Let's flip it around, because we're gonna come back to some marketing stuff right towards the end. But I want to talk about that other side of this space that we know that some of our colleagues could be in, and that is around, you talked about owning that department or owning this program and building it from the ground up. But what happens if you're actually coming in as a consultant, or you're only temporary building this up to hand off to someone who is just now learning social intelligence, or a greener organization in the space, right? What type of challenges or areas should you think about if you're going to be in the position of building this up for someone else and passing it off? And how do you create stickiness so that when it's passed off, it's still used?
Yeah, no, that actually, those are really good challenges. Those are good challenges to bring up, right? Like I really had to, when I shifted from, going from owning to then being the consultant for the last year and a half or so, it definitely was a mind shift for me. But what I found was really interesting, and I think that many enterprise companies are facing this, is that they see the importance of social intelligence, which is great. So they're allocating some monies for it, right? Which is also great. But what they don't do is they don't kind of go all the way with it. And what I mean is that they don't necessarily hire somebody who is a professional in social intelligence, because back to the top of our conversation, social media is under this umbrella. My kids do it, my cousin does it. Everybody kind of has these assumptions about social media and not understanding that social intelligence, it's its own practice, and it has its own methodologies and experience that you need to know. There is some crossover from social publishing and engagement with intelligence, but ultimately they're different practices. So there's a challenge when you have a company we've got social intelligence and we've opened it up to the whole entire company, and that's great. And we had everybody take the 1 hour training that the platform offers for all new users, and to expect somebody to, with this whole new way of thinking and this whole other approach, to be able to successfully build Boolean queries and to actually understand the data that they're looking at. And then mostly they don't, but then how do they find those insights, right? And so what happens ultimately is things get built, things get used, don't have a lot of successes, people start going, that's social intelligence. That we don't need it. That's a waste of money. It's a waste of time, because they didn't do it all the way, right? Like I wouldn't buy a car without tires, but a lot of companies buy cars without tires. And so that's really frustrating. So I've come into organizations where I'm driving a car without tires. I have to come and create the tire and put it on and show them how to drive it with the tires on. So, it's what you were saying, I'm a marketing person that fell into analytics, right? That wasn't what I was thinking I was going to be doing when I graduated college, that's for sure. So in a weird way, it's been very helpful that I love analytics, but I have marketing background. So I know how to marketing speak. I know the language. So that helps me be a translator a little bit. So coming in, to other organizations, you have to be careful, because, this is personal for other people as well, right? They've put a lot of time and energy into it. But I think that if you come from the perspective of okay, I'm not going to own this, but what I'm going to do is empower this group, these folks, to be able to do some of this work themselves, then that's some satisfaction, right? And what I found is that by giving them some of these tools, and I'll get to how they can kind of leverage that after I'm gone, after I'm not there anymore. But it's really that, not just to show them how it really could or should be for them, and the power that they can get from it, right? So now I am giving you some time and energy, and I'm going to show you exactly this is why you don't put owned and earned together. This is why if you want to look at just healthcare physicians versus the whole world, this is how you do it. So I took the time to understand where the grievances were, to be honest with you. This wasn't my full-time job, and now all of a sudden I got to do this, and I only got 10 minutes a day. And it's a hard position to be in when that's not something that you signed up to do, but all of a sudden it's what you have to do. And then somebody from the outside is going to come in and then lead. So what I said before, this thread of listening, right? I want to know, what are your challenges? What are you trying to do? What are your stakeholders asking of you? And let's work together to refine what you have. Not, just scrap it, but let me show you how to refine this and give them tools. And what I learned took me a couple months in of being a consultant. But now what I do is, with everybody's permission, we record our sessions, because one day my contract will be up and I will not be here to ask those questions to. But if everything is recorded, they have the ability to go back to those recordings and go, oh, when I asked Kathleen this, or oh, when I was trying to only look at, quote tweets, how do I do that? I mean, yeah, you could try and look at the tool, but like, here's the video, like, and I actually am giving you an example of your data of how to do it in your tool of record. And I think that help. I'm not going to say it's not challenging, Khalil, because you are like an outsider coming in. So some people look at like, oh, thank goodness for the help, and others are like, I don't know what she's doing here, but this is taking up my time, and I don't have enough time as it is. So those things will happen, but I do think that, it sounds so corny, but listening really in all aspects of your job is the most important part of being successful in social intelligence. And then taking what you heard with your ears and then applying it and having that lens, and then really like demonstrating that through your actions and the video recordings of the trainings and sharing that with them. I think that was impactful. It is hard to like build things, give it away, and I'm hoping that they look at the videos and they maintain it in the way that I've showed them. They may not, but like they have this opportunity now. And so I also leave parting gifts. So my parting gifts are, here's how to templatize some of this stuff, because you guys are not social intelligence practitioners and you're not doing this full time. Here's a way to be able to do this a little easier, to manage it. And that's the other thing. A lot of these companies don't have any governance around the program. It's just a tool and everybody have at it and good luck. And when there's no governance around it, like, we need parameters, right? We're human beings and we need rules of the road for certain things. Doesn't mean that you can't cross over the lines, but I need to at least have some lines to start with. And then I know if I should cross them or not. And so I think because companies don't have that practice of governance over it the way that, like, I think when you're in a regulated space, you might, I think that it makes it kind of like the wild, wild west. And then nobody really knows if they're doing it right. Because how do you know if there's nobody else to tell you if you're doing it right or not? There is nobody. So it's hard. So my parting gifts are templatizing intake forms, right? Like, make sure they know to give you this information in this format. Make sure, like, your dashboards, here's one that you can use and you can replicate. You could copy it and then just plug in the new data. So then this way that saves you time, but also it gives something to your stakeholder that's asking for it. So it was a learning curve for me this last year and a half as a consultant. I can't say that I didn't have some tears giving my babies away, but overall, I think that that's the best that we can do as a consultant is just that we have to know that we can give recommendations and suggestions. We can give them the empowerment to do some of these things on their own and templatize stuff when you can, do recordings when you can. But ultimately, if you're not there, you have to be able to say, like, it's gonna be okay. It's just gonna have to be okay. And and if it isn't, it isn't. But at least the time that you were there, that you gave a good impact, and something that can live on after you're there.
Yeah. No, one thing that I found when I was consulting, and I wasn't consulting on the social intelligence side, but just in general, is that once you have that approval from leadership to come in, sometimes you get the stink eye a little bit from senior or the more advanced leadership in the mid-level leadership, because they may feel a little territorial, right? So one thing that I like to always do, just in general with consulting, is making sure that I get that buy-in from the top, and then helping implement those habits, like, moving forward. So whether it's a monthly or weekly stand-up around a certain topic, or a surefire way to kind of set up, or making sure that Booleans or things are set up correctly. It's like implementing those systems so that it's easy for them to continue to do that. And then I think I love one thing that you said too, is about anchoring into that jobs to be done. Every department has a job that they need to do, whether it's move product, whether it's reputation, whatever the jobs to be done in that department. Understanding what that is, and then making sure that social intelligence tool stack and workflows are aligned to that jobs to be done. could help that again become part of that habit, that process that could be there left over. But I love the way you kind of broke that down because it's true. Because I think that considering that it's a growing space, you're going to see companies trying to grow this from within, but then also companies bringing people in like you to kind of come in and get things rolling and then leave. So that's the challenge though in our space is to just make sure that it all kind of comes together because personally, and you're starting to see it yourself, the space is growing. It's not going
Yeah.
away at all. And the channels, there'll be more social media platforms, more ways for consumers to connect with each other. Um, and with AI, I mean, there'll be more emphasis on certain types of content in the
Yeah.
next, years to come. So, but let's switch back over to some of the marketing stuff since we're both marketers, but we love this stuff, right? When you're integrating this social intelligence stack, the social intelligence practice into your marketing strategy, what are some of those overall areas that you want to consider when specifically looking into an area of marketing for your strategy versus just kind of calling out? Okay, this is an easier way. Let's break down what the finding is versus an insight. I think that's a better question, right? What's a finding when you're out here doing that research and you're doing your listening versus what's an actual insight that you can take and make something with?
Yeah, and I think you almost like really quickly defined it, right? Because a finding is in that moment, right? And it might impact something in the moment, but an insight is something to me that has a potential for longevity, right? Because an insight might be, oh, there is a shift over the last 6 to 8 months in sentiment about, I'm trying to think of one that I recently worked on. Sentiment about, this is going to sound boring. I've been banking, so forgive me. Anyways, I've been in banking too long. Buy now, pay later, right? So I mean, who was like, I mean, it's a layaway program, right? It's not new, but
Right.
it's got a new name and a new way about it. And so this is nothing that the bank was looking at, cared about. It has nothing to do with, any offerings that they had at the time. But that is an insight I wasn't necessarily looking for, but it did have something that was like, wait a minute, even if we're not going to offer buy now, pay later as a product for this bank, this is something that we need to be able to address with our clients, be it we need to content for our bankers to verbalize when clients come in and talk to them or on the phone or through email. It's also how do we have talking points on our website, and also when we're in press and we're doing earnings and like, hey, Chase and everybody's doing this, why aren't you guys doing it, and being ready for that. That's, to me, that's an insight that has a lot of impact in a lot of different areas around an organization, where a finding is like, hey, maybe we should not feature a particular, this is one. There are certain physical signs that people may use to indicate their identity with a particular group. I won't get into details. And I know that even though we may not have video or visual content that has that in there, that is something that I'm going to bring to the business, because that's a finding, right? Like, hey, let's make sure going forward we never use this particular hand signal in any of our content visually because of this. It was a finding. I wasn't looking for it, but it is something that can inform the business and protect it and make sure the marketing is successful. But the other stuff that I was talking about, that had like longevity and could actually like go not just longevity, but also impacts various parts of an organization that you have to arm multiple people, multiple teams for. So that, I think, to me is the difference in a finding and an insight.
Yeah, I like to post the question that way because again, we want to help individuals get that seat at the table, and I guess really even understanding that part and it's the data storytelling side of what you have to do. It really is predicated on making sure you understand that if it's a finding or if it's an insight, and then where you go pedal to the metal at in explaining that. So I think that that's like the biggest lesson, especially when it comes to something that moves as quick as marketing. And you're
Yeah.
100% right. You don't want, like a gesture or some unforeseen weird like symbol that you may have on your hat that you don't know that it may be connected to something deeper that doesn't associate with your brand, right? So those are great call outs and very, very, very good way to kind of touch the marketing subject because those were one of the questions that I had. But to kind of wrap things up, and I was going to come here. We want to talk about trends, but specifically, what trends do you foresee in the space? Like, I mean, obviously, I know one that you're going to talk about is going to potentially be AI. But what are some of the trends that you see shaping this space of social intelligence, and how can others prepare to, you know, navigate through the changes that we see in the space?
Sure. I mean, I think we're in a transitional moment right now, right? Because of, as you mentioned, AI. So it's we're living the actual trend, like
Right.
as we speak. And I think that AI has and will continue to have an important part in the work that we do. It already is. It's helping me sift through data that would take me much longer to do. It's even when it's like sifting through data and it tells me something, I'm like, wait a minute, this is wrong. It's telling me that my Boolean query needs to be updated, right? So like even unintentionally, AI has been really helpful for me. So I think that AI will continue without a doubt to like across all industries, but in particular our practice of social intelligence, it will be something that won't replace what we do, but it will optimize. And that's what I feel like has been happening, right? I've seen this like optimization happen. I also think that, as tools are shifting and changing, like we still don't know if there'll be any governmental shift in regards to what we can or cannot do with TikTok, right? So that's still kind of a up in the air question. I think we'll know more in January of next year where we may or may not go in that regulatory direction. So that could have a big impact. And I think that is the theme, right? Again, going back to my regulatory roots here, it is how much government involvement, good or bad, however you perceive it, will have an impact, because we're seeing things that are happening in regards to privacy in European countries. And a lot of the companies that we work for are, multinational, global companies. So there's going to be some forcing on American companies or companies that are headquartered in America and then have presence outside, that are going to force us to revisit how we do things, like where we get the data, how we leverage the data, and also like, are we even going to have access to all of it? Probably not, right? So that I did a little chat on disappearing data recently for another conference that I was at, and that is absolutely true. I think that trend is also happening, right? Like the access to the data is definitely becoming a little more kludgy over time, and there's APIs that are closed. So I think for the future is social intelligence started off with social media. Then social intelligence started including all like digital media or most digital media. I think social intelligence is evolution, well, that it'll be continue to grow, but it'll also be pulling in or accessing other data elements and marrying that information together. So it'll be even more holistic than what we're looking at today. So that in its sense is much better. I think we're a ways from that, but I don't know, with AI, we might get there faster than we think. So those are some of the things that I think we're living the trends, but I think that there's some like unknowns out there with regulatory, global, as well as local, that may have an impact on what we can or cannot do. So TBD on that. But I think that we're still in that process of like figuring some things out with AI. So I don't have a full answer, but that's kind of what I'm seeing and kind of how I'm preparing for how I'm going to evolve my methodologies and how I approach pulling in data, and just making sure that I'm also more tight with the other groups that are in charge of data within an organization as well. Because if we can really pull all of that together where appropriate, sky's the limit.
Yeah, that's the pie in the sky idea, is to be able to silo in the data across the entire organization so you can leverage all the many, many different data points that companies have. They have more than what they know what to do with.
Yeah. But it's not just one tool. There's no holy grail tool. I used to want a holy grail tool. Now I know I don't want that. That's a Swiss Army knife. I want an amazing tool like Nishfire that's great at what it does, and I want to marry it with this tool that's great at what it does. Let everybody be really awesome at like one or two things, and then let me have the best of everything, and let me pull that together and a la carte, so to speak, right? Like let me bundle the way that it makes the most sense for my organization and have the best of everything versus the holy grail that has everything in it, but they put a little more money and attention over here, even though my priority is over there. Like, so that's, for me, I think that as much as companies are trying to go more pulling it all in holy grail style, I'm really hoping that we continue and really build tech stacks that are unique and really answer the questions and objectives of the organization itself. And that to me is a much bigger success for the brands as well as the clients.
Yeah, you we'll have to, and I'm gonna try to get Frank on one of these episodes so he can talk about that. He has a wonderful representation of what a social intelligence tool stack could look like, how you should think about it, and exactly what you said. There's no holy grail. You don't want everything in one tool because how, and this is like kind of behind the scenes of a social digital data company owner, right? How the data comes into these systems is different for every different channel.
Yeah.
If you have an all-in-one, they're going to have some issues with some area, guarantee. And then, I mean, that's why the companies waste money trying to build these internal tools, and then they end up talking to niche fire. So, but I tend to agree with you on the direction of where things are going, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're able to get into the door and have conversations with companies because they understand that our data set isn't narrow; it's very broad. It's many different social channels. It's web, it's search, it's all those things, and it's leveraging those channels not to just show you the quantitative side. It's a quantitative, qualitative, mix that you'll see that plays into our trend spotting methodology. But I'll save that for the website. Kathleen, this was amazing. I really appreciate your time today. I want to take the last couple minutes to just open up the floor for you, talk about whatever you want to talk about, leave a question for the next guest, however, and then we'll close out the episode. So the floor is yours. This is your spotlight moment.
Oh my goodness, I had no idea. I would have been more prepared. Well, I can say I'm greedy. I'm a greedy person, and no, I'm greedy. I'm greedy when it comes to social intelligence, and what I mean by that is that I feel like Khalil, you and Michael and everybody have been doing this with me is fighting the good fight, right? Getting that visibility and street cred, if you want to call it, for social intelligence and all the adjunct tools that go with it. And I think that to me is like something that I really appreciate with you doing this particular podcast, because I think that helps amplify what it is that we're doing and really differentiates the difference between really important good stuff, engagement and publishing, but they get all the like oohs and ahs and awards and it's sexy and and like we're over here, we're baby in the corner, like don't forget about us. And so, but yet here's such foundational important information that impacts the whole entire organization, right? Like not just marketing, not just one piece, like the whole thing. And so I find it vexing that we're still having to kind of fight the good fight, but I love the fact that now there's more people with me, fighting the good fight and bringing that too. So I guess my wish is that going forward that we see more brands understand the importance, the equal importance of social intelligence to other functions in a marketing organization, and then also understand the unlimited capabilities that we have if they actually give the resources for it, right? Don't do it halves, don't do it quarters. If you really do it all the way, it is an investment in the future. And like that's what I'd like to just see and I hope for more of. I feel like that groundswell is starting now in this last I don't know, maybe the last 2 years, and particularly the last, like, maybe 8 to 12 months. So I'm starting to feel that momentum, and your podcast is helping with that. But that's kind of like what I'm seeing and what I'm hoping for, because I love this work. I know you guys do too, and I want to be a part of. I've been there from the beginning, and I've seen all this evolution. I want to be there. I want to like keep hanging in there. I want to see where we're gonna go next, because in 5 years from now, we could be doing something completely different with this data that we didn't even know about. And I can't wait to figure that out. I can't wait for that. So that's kind of my excitement. So I guess for your next guest, it would be like, maybe that's it. Like, what is next? Like, is it, yes, implementation of AI, it's here, but is there an ant waiting to get on the counter, for our practice? I'd just be curious. I mean, I don't know what that is. Maybe somebody else does. So we'll let somebody else figure it out.
Kathleen, I think that's a fantastic way to close out this episode. This was fun. I mean, we've been talking for a little bit over an hour, so definitely always grateful to have you. I continue to be a cheerleader in your corner. You guys go reach out to Kathleen on LinkedIn. I'll have her information in the show notes. Appreciate everyone checking out this episode. We'll have another episode coming right after this one pretty soon. But until then, I'd like to sign off for the Honeypot podcast, and make sure everyone likes, subscribes, shares this on LinkedIn. Let's get the followers up and all that good stuff going. But until then, we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thanks, Khalil.
All right.